I just relocated from Miami to Orlando, Florida.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So we've been here, my daughter and I. I got a job transfer because Miami is completely out of control, and we got a little opportunity to start all over again here in Orlando. So yeah, it's fresh beginnings for us.
So how old's your daughter?
She's 15. She just turned 15 in January. She just started high school. So it's been a lot of change, but all for the positive, I feel. Sometimes change is good. It's welcomed.
Yep. Yep. It's just hard on the front end to adjust. I'm sure it's hard for her to move and start
She
over, but
she was having some issues in school. So, it was almost like we had to get out of there. You know what I mean?
yeah, I do.
And it's been challenging because we are here by ourselves. We really don't have any family here. I really didn't have any friends here either. So we're really fighting this alone. But it's been good, where there's a will, there's a way. That's always kind of like my thinking. So you'll figure it out step by step, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's always when you move a good year before you feel normal and all that. And it takes a lot of effort. It's just it's stressful and not in a bad way. It's just a lot. So,
It's
I mean,
funny
I've
because yeah,
done it.
my regional manager, which is the one that brought me over here from Miami, that relocated me, she told me, she's like, Monica, when I relocated, it took me about a year
Yeah.
to finally say, like, I am home. Like this
Yeah.
feels like home. And recently it just started kind of happening where it was like I went and I visited my mom in Miami. And like driving back, I was like, okay, like I'm not getting that anxiety that I was feeling in the beginning when
Yeah.
I was here.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
even remember thinking like it takes a year, just like doing laundry,
yeah.
like for your body to know this goes here and like getting that process, habitualized.
That almost like
It,
that programming that we become
Mhm.
adapted to, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm learning my way around the streets now. I'm still dependent on GPS, but not as much as I was in the beginning where I was completely lost. So I still have a long ways to go. It's a huge city.
So
And
what do
it's
you do
so I
besides this?
so I work in broadcast television and radio sales.
Okay.
And I've been doing that for over 25 years across pretty much every major network that you can think of. I've been there. So now I'm on the radio side of it and digital, like everything else, right? Like everything is digital now
Yeah. So
and that
this is your
aspect.
personal passion project?
This is like my what keeps me going.
Mhm.
It started kind of out of a little depression that I fell into. And I've always felt comfortable in front of the camera. And it was really just talking to people that were just going through tough times and
Yeah.
that kind of helped me kind of realize like hey like everybody's on the hamster wheel just like you are just
Yeah, and this is where the juice is,
yeah.
people like to hear stories and befores and after and inspiration and hope. Like it's very powerful.
It's funny because when I started, it was with a girlfriend of mine that was kind of pushing me, right, and motivating me to do this. And it was just to have fun. Let's start talking about like dating apps and dating and getting back out there. And little by little, I started just getting different guests talking to me about like real personal issues that they were like, cancer and suicide, like heavy stuff. So it's turned into almost a mental health podcast at this point where people are reaching me. And I'm also getting a lot of emails from people that say that they've watched certain episodes with, former addicts, to crystal meth and, cocaine and alcohol and how they've contacted that coach that offers those services.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel good, right? Like I believe that we're all here to serve others. Like that's just like a genuine gift that we're supposed to kind of it helps us feel better, right? So it feels
Definitely.
nice when you kind of help somebody. So I'm sure that you find your line of work very rewarding. So I definitely want to dive into that. Thank you. I really appreciate you speaking with me today.
You're welcome.
So let me
I'm
give you a quick
excited.
little intro here. So, hey everyone, I'm Monica Clavijo, and welcome to the Bear Experiment podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Colleen Kachmann.
Cashman.
Cashman, I was way off. Also known as the Hangover Whisperer. Girlfriends, We're going to talk because I'm going to learn a lot from you today. Colleen is an intuitive drinking coach who helps high achieving women reduce their alcohol consumption by 80% without having to completely quit. Now, in this episode, we'll dive into her personal journey, her coaching strategies, and the science behind why we drink and how to take back that control. So you're going to definitely love this episode, but please continue to support our podcast by subscribing to our YouTube channel and hitting the notification bell so that you never miss an episode to keep bringing you great stories and great coaching available by dynamic guests that come onto the podcast. So now let's dive in. So, Colleen, you are a professional, beautiful woman, and you were drinking every single day for 15 years. All right, talk to me. So how did you manage? How much were you drinking? How did you manage that? And how were you able to wake up in the morning and seize the day, you know?
Well, I had no option. I have four kids of my own. At the time, I was married and had three stepkids. So we raised seven, and by we, I mean mostly me, raised seven teenagers for over 10 years. And so, how did I cope? I was using alcohol to cope. You know, from the moment my eyes opened in the morning, I had people when they were babies screaming at me, you know, it's go time. I need breakfast. I had three dogs. I had built a life of chaos. I look back now and make a joke that having all these kids was actually an ADHD coping strategy. I didn't know I had ADHD. I was just very wired for chaos. I didn't know what to do if I had 5 minutes, which is ultimately what the drinking manifested. You know, I would, this idea that I'm either way behind and way overwhelmed and there's way too much to do, or 5 seconds later, I'm bored, you know? And so I would use alcohol to kind of cope with that lull. Alcohol became my medicine in that it was the only way, truthfully, it was the only way I could shut down my mind because what I was a high achieving, very driven, perfectionistic, all or nothing, go big or stay home person. You know, even with four babies, I was still teaching boot camps and hot power yoga at 7 a.m., you know, getting all four of these kids to the gym and checking them into childcare, and then taking clients throughout the day, volunteering at the schools, you know, doing the home. We talked about moving before we started recording, and my first husband and I moved quite a bit for his job. So I was always hauling all these people and all this crap and organizing everything and just the hostess with the mostest and the friend that was the funnest. And I just lived in this hyper drive state. And so alcohol was my medicine. And I coped for years. For a long time, my use was about a bottle of wine a day. I could drink a bottle of wine as a warm-up lap. You know, I was not inebriated. I would drink it over the course of a whole evening. I didn't think that that was even a problem. Now, over time, social cues told me that other people didn't drink on a Monday night. You know, that so then I began to hide it, and we can talk more about what alcohol use disorder is and how it develops. But for a long time, at least 10 of the 15 years that I cite to, oh, I drank every single day, I was drinking a bottle of wine every single day, living my best life, loving it, did not perceive that to be a problem. Not to say I could never point to a fight that I got into with my spouse, you know, that maybe wouldn't have happened, but I never perceived alcohol to be a problem. It was my solution.
Right.
Do not mess with my formula here for how I'm keeping 87 plates in the air at all time.
Yeah, it's enormous pressure, you know, trying to keep up with this lifestyle that you have going on. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so then as anybody who's struggled with alcohol, you know that you kind of it gets easier and then it gets harder. And what happened for me is then I'm in my second marriage now. Instead of four kids, I have seven kids. And the marriage was not one where I felt it wasn't a good fit. How about that? We're divorced now. And so I started using more and more alcohol to cope. And you do form a tolerance. You know, it is true that, you know, somebody else needs one drink. I need at least three to get that same sensation. So my tolerance ticked up. My fear that this is a problem ticked up. My having to compensate more good behavior for bad behavior ticked up. And then basically it all came to a head in very early COVID. I followed directions, stay home, let's pour drinks. And about 5 weeks into COVID, I woke up and said, the only thing worse than the idea of quitting drinking is the idea of not quitting. Like, I surrender, I give up. And then I did what we think we have to do in this culture, which is get completely sober, go to AA, get myself a sponsor, 90 meetings in 90 days, start working the steps, make my list of amends, swear I'm never going to drink again, and identify as an alcoholic. And per my perfectionistic mindset, I frickin' stuck the landing on that, So now I'm wearing sober as fuck t-shirts and
You're taking it to another
yep,
extreme. Yeah.
yep, giving free advice on, did you know alcohol is a class 1 carcinogenic, and 1 bottle of wine equals 10 cigarettes and it's a poison and, ruins your brain. So free lectures for everybody. I even started being a sober coach. That's where I got into, kind of the current iteration of my business. But what happened was my experience of my life, once sobriety kind of began to feel normal. Okay. And so I've healed, my liver has detoxed, I've got my full capacity back. Once it began to feel normal, then it no longer felt like such a big accomplishment to not drink. And I'm sitting in these meetings where everybody's talking about their drinking problem. And I'm like, I don't even drink anymore. Like, does anybody notice that we're talking about a problem we don't have? Like,
Because how does that work? Like, once you're in AA, is it like a lifelong kind of
yes.
commitment that they require? Okay.
Where I take issue with the philosophy, not the people,
Uh-huh.
is that once an addict, always an addict. Like, if you diagnose
Right.
yourself as an alcoholic, that's an identity. That is far different than
That's not who you are. That's not
experiencing.
who you are.
Right. It's not a permanent thing. And science does show that the belief that you can lose control is what causes you to lose control. Even, being in the worst moments of my own legit straight up addiction, I could not drink if I had to drive. I could not drink if I didn't want a puffy face, in the morning, or if I was getting my liver enzymes tested. I could control myself when I was properly motivated. So this whole idea that you can't stop once you start, it's just a story you tell yourself. And there are studies that show that this culture created by programs like AA, it's like they train you to reconstruct the whole narrative of your life. I remember sitting in meetings with people, they're like, well, I was an alcoholic from the time I was 3.
Yeah.
Were
How's that
ya?
possible? Yeah.
Were ya? But whatever you tell yourself is true. So bottom line, 18 months into daily sobriety meetings and, working the steps and working the program so that I could protect my sobriety, I kind of just realized, oh my God, this is all just another version of the alcohol game. I just switched teams. I went from,
It's another addiction, right? Now you're
yeah. And you know what? If you're going to be an all or nothing person with alcohol, I highly recommend the nothing. Like, moral superiority, there's an in club, you get to tell all your bad stories. Like, I highly recommend nothing. Sobriety was a wonderful way to live if you had to choose between the two. But the bottom line is you don't. And as I was coaching women, putting my sign in online, and I'm a sober coach and I'll get you sober in 12 weeks and doing that, what I found was that most people don't want to stay sober forever. And so I was helping women reintroduce alcohol. As a coach, we don't set the agenda. You get to decide what's right for you. I support your decisions. I'll help you work through them. And it was going fine. And all of a sudden I realized the only reason I wasn't having a drink when I meet up with a girlfriend, because the idea of 1 glass of wine actually started to sound nice. The only reason I wasn't doing it was because I had this fear that I'd lose control, and the slippery slope, wake up the addiction monster, all these things they program you to believe. And so then I reintroduced alcohol myself, and I got to watch all of it come back. Your mind's just crazy, and I got to work through all of that, and in doing so, developed a lot of tools, really dug into the research on neuroscience and nervous system regulation and the beliefs that drive addiction. and just began to apply it on myself, work more and more with my clients. And now I've got myself to a place where I am confident 100% that we've cracked the code on alcohol use disorder. I understand what causes it. I understand what changes it and how to move forward.
Did you go to counseling at all? Did you see a therapist during this time frame?
I had a lot of different support systems. I had a therapist multiple times. I did coaching myself, where, I had a coach. So I had a sober coach and then another mindset coach, so I'm a big proponent of coaching, support, all of that. So there's not one thing that helps. It's kind of all the things. It's the collection.
Did you find yourself that you had to disassociate with certain groups of friends that were encouraging excessive drinking or were heavy drinkers and, as a result, you would just fall back into those habits?
Well, what's interesting is the question itself. I no longer notice how much people are drinking. When you have the mindset of a drinker, you walk into a party, what are you thinking about? Where's the bar? Did I bring enough? How much are they drinking? How much can I get away with? That's how your mind is going. But the same party, a lawyer, a chef, a musician, an artist walks in and notices completely sets of details. The music or the food or
Right.
the art is the colors and the angles and the shapes. So do I now filter my friendships and my social interactions based on a completely different set of metrics. Do I find you interesting? I don't care how much you're drinking. I've been around some of my old friends who might be, you can tell when people are blacking out, they start repeating on about a two
Yeah.
minute, a 2 minute cycle. I get bored real fast and be like, and I think I've exceeded my time here. I'm late to be somewhere else.
Right. So you understand where you have to kind of like cut it yourself also and just walk away from the situation. So when you were uh getting into your intuitive coaching aspect of your life cycle, did you find that when you were offering this advice to women in the beginning, that you were just offering this advice constantly to women, did you find that people were kind of like repulsed by it, or were they accepting to you speaking about, what was helping you stop drinking because you were binge drinking or drinking excessively?
Well, the people who work with me are, like we all are, desperate to find an answer and a solution. By the time someone works with me, they have chosen to believe that my path is the one they want to follow. There is no one truth. There's the truth that feels good in your body. I was sober for 3 years. I was the idea of somebody offering a course on moderation or teaching mindful drinking was so offensive because we all know that you're either an alcoholic or you're not. And it's one drink leads to 1,000 drinks. I was parroting all of that philosophy. So the women who work with me, no, they have chosen to work with me, chosen to place their trust in me, that, my experience with both myself and my clients, I am just basically shortening the distance or the time it takes. I'm showing them where the pitfalls are. I'm giving them the strategies and the
The
reframes.
tools.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that it's taken me years to figure out, and here you're going to get the same thing in about 3 months. That's why we work with people. We're buying their wisdom. We're buying time for ourselves to shorten the learning curve. But I get a lot of hate on, social media, and it can be very stressful and I have to learn to manage it. But people who call me either crazy or stupid or evil. That is what I get from, and then I have to remember it's not even AA that's doing that. It's a small percentage of people who have nothing better to do than be a troll on social media.
You're always gonna have your trolls on social
They
media, and
don't
usually,
speak
and
for
usually,
everybody.
usually their name is like CW 1 2 3 4 5 6, right? It's
Yeah.
like everybody's hiding behind the screen.
Or it's like love, peace, and light. And you're like,
Yeah,
are you? Is that
right,
is that the thing? Because I'm not feeling love, peace, or light coming out of your mouth.
right, 100%. So talk to me about you talk about how alcohol is a biphasic drug. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, we as a in our culture, because of these beliefs, this bipolar paradigm where you're either an alcoholic or you're a normal drinker, we are never taught that alcohol is a drug. It is not a magic potion. It is not, if you're happy, it helps. If you're sad, it helps. When you go to the doctor and get any other drug, it comes with dosing, how often to take it, what circumstances to take it in. We are never taught that with alcohol. Now, in some cultures, the alcohol is a normal part. I think of European cultures where you can have a glass of wine with lunch. In the United States specifically, it lends itself to more of a binge drinking culture because you can't even have a drink till you're 21. And so those of everybody, most kids do experiment with alcohol. They have to hide it. They have to drink as much as they can get away with.
Right.
They
So
don't
we're
have
already
to.
being taught a pattern from a
Right.
very young
They're
age.
not like, oh, this is a very nice expensive bottle of wine. Like, how much can I get for 20 bucks? How fast can I drink it?
Yep.
And so we are just kind of primed to get really bad habits with alcohol, where we've got this idea, the more we drink, the more fun we're going to have. And we're taught that unlimited drinking is like you deserve that. Like somehow the harder you work, the more you deserve to drink your face
Right.
off.
Yeah.
And it's these just kind of unspoken rules that are the wallpaper. You don't really see it, where you just believe, well, if one drink is good, two drinks is better, three drinks, and so we get into these habits with alcohol. Biphasic drug means that small amounts and large amounts of alcohol have opposite effects, which means there are therapeutic benefits to alcohol between the 0 and 0.055 blood alcohol level, which is about 2 drinks for women. That is the buzz that you are looking for. You feel soft and cozy and a little talkative and grounded.
Loosen up. Yeah.
It shuts off your mind. Like I
Mhm.
said, it was my medicine. It truly helped me because I didn't have the tools or the awareness that my mind was the problem. I thought my life was the problem. And so the biphasic effects of alcohol, when you cross that line, the negative side effects begin to compound. Now, what has to happen because alcohol depresses the central nervous system, your brain's job is to keep you alive, and you can't get so relaxed you forget to breathe. So it
Right.
starts to release cortisol and adrenaline and norepinephrine. And that's why you're so tired on a Friday night, and people are like, just come have one. And you're like, oh, fine. And then suddenly it's 3 a.m. and you've been dancing and having so much fun. And it's like it anesthetized your fatigue, and it released cortisol and adrenaline, which boosted you and sent you back into the world. But then, as the buzz wears off and you go into sleep, the high cortisol levels don't dissipate. And so you wake up in the middle of the night filled
Right.
with anxiety. And, cortisol is an agitator. You're supposed to get up and do something. But in the middle of the night, the only thing to do is lay there and think. And then you start getting thoughts about why do I keep doing this and what is wrong with me? And it's a very negative mindset. And then it just begins to corrupt your thinking processes. I think of alcohol use disorder as a mind virus that begins to infect other areas of your life slowly.
So, are the high levels of cortisol the reason why, for example, after a night of binge drinking, you are in an enormous amount of anxiety the next day? Like you just, you're dying. You're hungover, you're feeling shameful, you're regretful of stupidities that you did under the influence. But the
Yeah.
anxiety levels, like there's a saying, right? Like it's a hangover anxiety that people
It's anxiety. Yeah.
Anxiety, that's what they're calling it, right?
Yeah.
I know that I've experienced that
Yeah.
through a night of over drinking, right? And the next day I don't want to get out of bed. I feel depressed. I
Yeah.
feel down. I feel shameful. Like I have all of these inner regrets and self-reflection of failure,
Yeah.
right? The next day. Why do we feel that so aggressively?
Well, multiple reasons. And cortisol would be one of many. There's also a dopamine. Basically think of like you have a limited amount of dopamine that your brain can make, and you've blown through a firecracker full of dopamine at night because alcohol spikes your dopamine, which
Right.
means you're in a dopamine deficit the next day too, which is apathy and low motivation and lethargy. Plus, of course, alcohol is very dehydrating. There's byproducts, metabolites like acetaldehyde that your body has to process, and everybody does different. So there are physical effects that cause you to feel bad. However, it is also mostly emotional. It is a product of the thinking habits. That's just why I call myself the hangover whisperer, because the change that needs to happen to
Is your thoughts.
interrupt the cycle of over drinking is not how much you drank last night. It is your response to yourself when you've made a mistake. And if you stay in the shame and the anxiety and the fear and the worry and the rumination, you're resetting the cycle that will cause it to happen again, which is why the interrupt of the cycle is not stop to change your behavior so you can
Right.
avoid these bad feelings. It's to learn how to process these bad feelings, adjusting your mindset, looking like shame. Shame is the autoimmune disorder of emotions. It
Right.
it eats you alive. And when you are in a state of shame or fear or anxiety, you're having a stress response. What does that mean? Biologically, it means that the mind is closed. There's no learning going on. You are just thinking the same stuff you've thought in the past, using the same strategies, making the same assumptions. When you keep repeating the same mistake over and over, what that tells you is you're not learning from it.
Right. Right.
And until you know how to clear the shame, process the anxiety, regulate the nervous system, practice compassion for yourself in this moment.
Loving yourself, learning to love
Yes.
yourself again.
Yes, that is what is the toehold out of the hole or getting off the hamster wheel. It's changing your response to where you're at, not promising yourself this is never going to happen again,
Right.
and using good behavior to avoid processing these negative emotions. And that's the problem, if I would use air quotes, around using sobriety to deal with alcohol use disorder. 90% of people will reintroduce alcohol at some point. Sobriety has about a 10% retention rate, okay? Which means that you can be sober for 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, 20 years. And if you've not processed the shame and the thinking habits that cause over drinking, then that's why AA people they will say, oh, somebody's been sober for 20 years and then they went out on a bender and, ended up killing themselves or
Right.
going. It's like, well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It also shows you never learned how to deal with the shame and then being trained to see one drink as a relapse that causes you to lose control. Well, I guess now you're just like, might as well fly to Vegas and do this
Right.
right.
Ah, ah.
So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but most of the mental anguish, I want to be clear, Monica, is self-induced, where your brain is literally abusing you, beating you up. And until you identify your thinking habits that need to change, then manipulating your drinking habits is not a long-term solution. It can make you feel better. I highly recommend drinking less or not at all.
So I love the phrase that you use where you say more alcohol will ruin my buzz, and that's one way to take control to not overdrink, right? Because you start feeling the little buzz, right? The special effects that oh, you're loosening up, you're not stressed out, and usually, like you're saying, that's probably around 2 to 3 drinks in. But then, how do you learn how to stop at that point and enjoy the
Yeah,
feeling of
yeah,
relaxation that you're going through and not drinking the bottle or the two
yeah,
bottles of wine that night, and then you're feeling like crap the next
yeah.
morning?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would say before we even get into that is you would have to understand and take full responsibility for the fact that you are choosing to drink. You have learned bad information, bad habits have formed, And so this idea that I can't stop once I start, oh, you can. And I train women to look back and and collect the subconscious urge, that fleeting thought of, I don't even want to drink tonight. Or, I feel like I've had enough. You are not aware that you do have, your body is giving you cues. You're just not paying attention to
Right,
them.
right.
And so it is a matter of focus. You have to learn to pay attention to those thoughts. And then also, learning that counting your wins the next morning. What do I mean by that? That means, okay, you wake up, you did have 3 glasses of wine. Now you're a little hungover. Looking back and realizing you did think after two, you've had enough,
I'm
but you
feeling
didn't
good.
act on it.
Right.
Okay, so looking back, the win is that, oh, it did occur to me. Not, oh, I didn't do it. I don't have any willpower. Like
Not the
there are
negative,
two
not
ways.
focusing on the negative, but focusing on the positive part. What lesson did I learn by having the third drink? Okay, I'm tired. I'm
Right.
puffy. I don't want to go to this meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning today.
But also realizing that what would I need to do in the future to cause that thought that I don't want anymore to be stronger and more powerful, so that I actually, there's a tipping point and I actually act on it. So just becoming aware of your thoughts in hindsight is how you build your response to them in the future, which is why it's so important to not beat yourself up, but actually look back and see, where could I have done better so that you can do better next time.
Do
So I
you
don't, go
do,
ahead.
do you so how do you encourage these practices for you to kind of stay thorough with remembering what you did the night before and how you should reflect on it? Journaling, like, is this part of the curriculum that you offer?
Yes, but what I want to be clear about my curriculum is it's very holistic. So let's just do big picture. If you are drinking 1 drink, 2 drinks, 3 drinks, 4 drinks, and you just go until you pass out, that is a lack of awareness of your own body. You are living in your head and you're disconnected in your body, which is why the women that I attract and work with, we are high achieving performers who push through the funk, the hard. We are constantly trying to push through, which means we have trained ourselves to ignore our body. We don't even notice when we have to pee. It might be days before we realize somebody's pissed us off. It's like this subconscious awareness that we are pushing down because we don't have time to deal with
Yep.
ourselves. So the real skill that has to be learned is that you have to start paying attention to yourself. It's kind of like they say foreplay begins in the kitchen. Like, don't come to bed and ask me for sex when you've been ignoring me all day. Yeah, like this begins in the morning, where you begin to cultivate a habit of being aware of yourself and what your physical experience is, instead of pulling the plug that connects your brain from your body and letting your brain be 3 steps, 3 days, 3 months ahead of you and dragging your body through life. If you felt, this is why it is not hard. Women are shocked when they go to do more mindful drinking experiments. Of course, you can drink mindfully when you're focused and paying attention. There's a 0% chance my body ever enjoyed drinking a whole bottle of wine. My body likes water, sleep,
Right,
nutrition,
right.
movement, connection. So I was just not paying attention to the fact that the first drink was fun. The fourth drink, I was just on autopilot, hand to mouth, hand to mouth, hand to
Yep.
mouth. So the solution is plugging your brain back into your body and living in the present moment. And that's where, like, there's no willpower here. When I have a second glass of wine and somebody's like, "Can I refill your drink?" I'm like, "No, God, no. I'm good." I don't have to, there's no mental math going on in my head, because I'm using my felt experience to make my decisions, instead of letting my brain be, well, I better finish that because it's a Friday night and I deserve it and I can sleep in the morning and she's already had two, so maybe I should have more. Like, get out of your head. And if you literally can drink as much that makes you happy and feel good, like, that's the good news. You don't have to deny yourself.
Right.
You have to learn how to pay attention to what feels good. That's it.
So your coaching comes from a holistic approach, like you mentioned. And it's a lot about learning how to, connect the mind and the body. So how important is spiritualism and kind of like awakening through this process of let's call it sobriety or learning
Yeah.
to control ourselves a little bit better. Is spiritualism a process involved in this? Meditation, connecting to the earth? Like, is this
Yeah.
something that you encourage?
Yes. But the first thing I would do is let's talk about what do we mean by spiritualism? Because that can be a very triggering word. Do I mean you need to give your life to the Lord Jesus Christ? Or do I mean, what does that mean? I define spirituality as connection to something greater than yourself.
Agreed.
And our emotions are our pathway to the divine. Like whether you call it the universe or God or spirit or
Source.
Jesus
Yeah.
or whatever, like it is the connection, this sense that there is something bigger than the three-dimensional world. And
Hmm.
our emotions are our portal to that. So people that live in their head and are simply calculating how much money do I make and how many trophies have I earned and how many degrees do I have and how many friends and likes do I have, when you're living at that superficial level, in order to focus on all that, you are not paying attention to these emotions and connection. Like the bottom line when people say I want to change my relationship with alcohol, I will say, no, you're going to change your relationship with yourself. You have to become the giver and the receiver of your own attention
I
and
love that.
goodwill.
I love that.
When you get that connection going, this problem will solve itself. Like that's the baseline to be like, and I give very simple tools like make your bed and then thank yourself for making your bed. And then later in the night, when you get in your bed, thank you so much for making the bed. This feels so good. I love it when I walk in the room. Like I use a lot of third person language. Colleen, thank you so much for stopping at the store and making sure I've got vegetables to chop for dinner. Colleen, that was so good. And when you do these things, you begin to feel appreciated
So
and noticed.
it's trying your hardest to live in a present moment in a state of gratitude as well, right?
And a state of connection to the present moment instead of in your head where I used to live. I will feel relaxed as soon as I get
Right.
87 things done. Everybody around me agrees. Everybody else is happy and there's nothing going on. Oh, okay. Well, that's why you have a drinking problem.
Right, right.
That's
That's
not a thing.
I completely can associate myself with that mind frame as well. So how connected is like genetic components to alcoholism and like, is it hereditary if one of
Yeah.
your parents was an excessive drinker, alcoholic?
The number one predictor of drinking problems, addiction, whatever you want to call it, is your belief in in your ability to control or not control yourself. People who believe that there's a difference between alcoholics and normal drinkers are more likely to move farther into addiction when the natural consequences of alcohol start happening. They interpret the data that they're looking at as being something is wrong with them. There is no genetic marker for alcoholism. That being said, of course, there are things that make one person's experience of alcohol either more pleasurable or less pleasurable. Just like two people can have the exact same diet, one person gets diabetes and the other person's drinking their face off. Like, of course, there are things about the enzymes and genes and stuff in our bodies that draw us to one coping solution versus another.
Mhm.
Some people might like downers, some people like uppers, some people want to smoke, some people want to eat. So there are things that make you more vulnerable to alcohol versus less vulnerable to something else that becomes your drug of choice.
Right.
But there is no genetic marker that makes you less likely to be able to control yourself at all. So this belief that it's an allergy, this belief that it's genetics and that there is no species out there of alcoholic. There is nothing done
Right.
upon, a genetic test or autopsy that shows, oh, this is one of those. And so it's just like it's not necessarily diabetes that runs in families, it's the diet and the lifestyle that
Right.
runs in the families, combined with the genetic variations that make them more vulnerable to a certain set of symptoms. So it is people that have been taught how to think about alcohol. Like, I always say I was trained to drink by a frat house hazing specialist in college. Drink,
Hmm.
drink, drink. And so it is the culture of alcohol, the beliefs about what over drinking means about a person. Those things are passed down in our lineage, in our social circles.
Right.
But no, there is no genetic component that means you're going to drink. No.
So my father was an alcoholic, and he was an excessive alcoholic. He was a political prisoner, went in at 20, got out at 30. So he had a very difficult, part of his life for 10 years
Yeah.
in Cuba. I can't imagine what that did to him, the torture, the self-hate, what happened while he was in prison. And as a result of that, he was always excessively drinking vodka, up to a bottle of vodka a day. So it got really ugly with him. A great father, great person. He was just deeply wounded and he
Yeah.
never healed properly. Um, so that's why I asked that, because sometimes, like I notice for myself, for example, when I've gotten into certain ruts in my life, where I do get a bottle of wine and I'll drink it very easily,
Hmm.
is this something that is because I learned that watching a parent drinking on a daily basis all the time, and to me, it's just normal to do that,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's just certain things. So you talk about the 90-second rule, and I like that. I like that, like overcoming that urge. So explain to us how we can incorporate that. I'm walking into a bar and I'm getting that urge to have that third drink. How do I stop myself?
Well, the first thing you need to understand is let's not take your damn urges so seriously. It is an idea that pops up into your head. You might also get the idea to go bang the waiter or to say something that you shouldn't say. So this idea that the urge, is something you can't respond differently to. That's the first thing. It's a feeling, not a fact. And
Yeah.
an urge, we label that, or we rate it by the intensity. So it's a feeling in your body that your brain is interpreting with an action step. I could solve this urge, this feeling, I could make this go away. Here's the solution: go get a drink, right? And so it's learning that actually the urge is the biochemistry of an urge is a, is like the neuro pathways, the dopamine release in your brain. Like if you are used to drinking, just thinking about drinking will trigger your dopamine and make you want to go get it more. So the brain is always working to help you get whatever you think you
Right,
want.
right.
So changing the phrasing to "I want to drink" to "I want to feel relaxed right now." That's what
Mhm.
you really want. Like every problem that you are trying to solve for is always emotion. You want to feel something different than you feel at this moment, and your brain is trying to help you solve that problem. So, 90 seconds, the biochemistry of an urge or any stress response reaction, all of the neurochemicals can clear within 90 seconds. This is neuroscience by Jill Bolt Taylor. And I want you to think about that moment you think you're going to get into a car accident or you think someone's in your room.
Yeah.
It floods your body. That's an
Mhm.
intense, extreme example. Once you realize there's no one in your room and you didn't get in a car accident,
Calm down.
unless you decide to sit there and think about it and fuck that guy because he shouldn't have been doing blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
unless you attach to it, 90 seconds later, it's gone.
I love that. I love the way you just explained that. That is so true. That is so
Yeah.
true. It's about just understanding that you have that thought and letting it go, right?
Yeah.
And in order to, so let's say right now you do have to go through a course of sobriety, just because you kind of need that starter, right? Where, okay, I've beat up my liver long enough. So how do we kind of retrain that brain chemistry naturally without having to get on any kind of medication to stop drinking? Is there a way for us to naturally kind of balance ourselves back to normal,
Yes.
brain waves?
Yes. So studies show that within 6 months of breaking an addiction is chronically high levels of cortisol and really low dopamine, coupled with the belief of whatever you think you need to fix that problem. But the biochemistry of addiction is just high levels of cortisol. You are agitated and looking, your brain has learned to solve that problem with more alcohol. So the, oh, I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about gaining control again if you need to go through a period of sobriety for your brain chemistry.
Yes. Okay. So Anna Lemke's research on dopamine specifically is you can reset your dopamine within 30 days. So if you want to take a break within 30 days, your dopamine levels have normalized without the substance. The problem that people don't understand is that dopamine is tied to story. It is your self narrative. This is why not everybody gets a runner's high. Not everybody loves to do things. So retraining your brain, it's not just the biochemistry. There's so many ways to support the biochemistry with, even like L-tyrosine supplements to support dopamine production. It's just amino acid. It's not a drug. You can
Does it work? Does it help though?
yeah. Yeah. Amino acids like L-tyrosine
Mm-hmm.
and GABA and glutamate, in the early days, whether you're sober or whether you're just decreasing, using L-tyrosine, GABA, and glutamate amino acids every few hours because you can't overtake them. Again, they're amino acids like a food product. They are not
Mm-hmm.
drugs. But giving your brain the maximum puzzle pieces to manufacture as much of these good brain chemicals as you can is really helpful. And so you can do that, but it's also really important to work on the narrative. When you do a period of sobriety and you think that you want to drink and you can't, what you're doing is reinforcing the idea that not drinking is hard.
Right.
That's why I say it's not like, don't tell me you're not drinking. Tell me what you are doing. Maybe I'm learning to regulate my nervous system without alcohol. Okay, like this is a positive goal. You have to be able to visualize what it is that you're doing. You have to know what you want to get what you want. You cannot get the absence of what you want.
Right. Right.
I don't want this. And so, like, when I have clients, I'll be very honest with you, who are, trying to do the 10-day detox or a 30-day period. And they're like, I'm just white knuckling it, whatever. I'm like, pour yourself a drink and stop then. Because all you're doing is doubling down and training yourself to believe that this is hard and this takes willpower. There are better ways to do it. And so you can reset your dopamine probably fastest with a period of sobriety. But I actually don't have my gals do that. The amount that you're drinking becomes a side effect, a reflection of the increased self-care practices. So even like just trying to drink less, we call it the delay, don't deny strategy. So you can get home from work. And if anybody's listening to me that goes straight from work to happy hour, boom, putting in 5 minutes to plug your brain back into your body. Take a breath, let the tension and tightness out of your shoulders without any attachment to not drinking later. Because what happens is people are like, okay, I can't drink tonight. And they just end up stressing themselves out.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
actually, you can drink tonight. So let's just knock that off. And what you have to train your brain to see the rewards of relaxing before you start drinking. Because if you started drinking from a relaxed, calm, content state, the amount of alcohol you would consume would just naturally be so much less. And so I call it delay, don't deny. Like instead of saying, I'm not going to drink tonight, well, can you not drink for 5 minutes or even 1 hour? Can you delay happy hour by 1 hour? And not just keep yourself busy and distracted. That's why if it's even 5 minutes of present relaxation, that's more valuable than just staying busy for an extra hour and delaying your start time.
And that same philosophy can apply to so many other aspects of your life, right? You're angry. Don't make that phone call to somebody when you're feeling that emotional because it's not going to be the right information that you're going to want to relay because you're in a state of
Yeah.
emotional anger at that point. Okay, so let's get a little bit about get a little bit into your coaching. So, how long does it normally like? How long is the course? How long are the
It's a
girls?
1 year program
Okay.
because you cannot rewire your brain and subconscious. 95% of everything you think and feel is subconscious. And that can only be changed through felt experiences, taking different actions, experience different results, learning in your brain. This is where I didn't finish the statistics. 6 months after you break the addiction, the gray area, the gray matter in your prefrontal cortex is denser in the self-regulation department, which blows the once an addict, always an addict bullshit out of the water.
Okay.
Actually, if you've overcome an addiction, you are more capable because you have more tools. It's a learning process.
Right.
Addiction is a learning process. Healing addiction is a learning process. So you can fix it again. Go ahead. What were we talking about?
We're talking about the course. So you're saying that
Ah,
it's a year course
yes.
that you're offering. Um, are we talking on the phone? Walk me through it. I
It's
just signed up
immersive.
with you.
Okay, you just signed up for me. We've got 3 coaching calls a week that you can get coaching with me, and it is holistic. It is not, just about drinking. About 30% of the content is geared towards mindful drinking and coaching around your behavior. The rest of it is boundaries and spirituality and your emotional management, all of that. But basically, my program has 3 pillars: coaching, community,
Okay,
and
I was gonna ask.
content.
So you do have a community where you get
Oh,
everyone
very
together?
active. 7 days a week. We have a Discord channel and we also have accountability groups. So there are small groups within the large groups where you have to give yourself a place to get out of your head and process your learning, strategize your struggles in a non-shame based, like, again, the win is that it occurred to you to not drink. And very few places where, if you've been a daily drinker and you're always drinking a bottle of wine, very few places can you show up on a Tuesday and be like, huge win, only had 3 glasses of wine last night. Like, that's not something you have. So these communities are for high achieving women, doctors, lawyers, elected public officials, tech execs, who are all having sharing space for each other, with the goal being to be feeling powerful and relaxed and content. And then noticing the side effect of that is drinking less. So, yeah, it's a big immersive program because alcohol use disorder is not a Saturday night problem with a Monday afternoon class solution.
A
You know,
hundred percent.
I
Yeah.
have 1,500 hours of podcasted feeds for you to learn, eat one skill at a time, one idea at a time. So over the course of a year, women are listening to podcasts every day, going to at least one meeting a week, whether it's our learning lounge, accountability group, our coaching calls. So it's really just a commitment. I work with women whose alcohol is their pain point, and they are 100% ready to take full responsibility for where they're at in their life and use personal growth, spirituality, intelligent thinking to get where they want to go in life. And the side effect of that is 80% reduction in drinking. You have no desire to drink yourself numb and dumb
Yeah.
when you feel powerful and like you're up to bigger and better things in your life.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. So, how can our viewers find you for more information or to speak with you directly about your courses?
Well, I have a podcast. It's called It's Not About the Alcohol.
Okay.
On YouTube, you can find me at Hangover Whisperer. I have a website called emotionalsobrietycoaching.com, and you can get my free how to reduce your drinking. I have a private podcast. You can sign up for that. You can reach out to me or my team, schedule a consultation, uh, look at all of our resources. So those would be the areas.
Okay, so I'll definitely be dropping in the comment section in our YouTube channel all of your links for your website, your podcast, which I'm eager to listen to as well, and all of your social media links. So, Colleen, to end this amazing podcast again, thank you so much for speaking with me. I've learned so much with you today. Um, can you close this off with, giving us one example of a very of a great story with somebody that signed up for one of your courses.
Oh, so many to pick from. Okay, so I'm thinking about one gal, Wendy, who joins the program and heavy daily drinker, successful financial advisor, really making bad decisions and, feeling regret. She has three children that are still teenagers, going to college soon, a marriage that she values and loves, and a business, and yet this daily drinking is taking her down. And joins the program, and not even doing all the components of the program, allowing herself to just go slow and really listen to self-care and connection with self is the most important thing. Within a couple of months, reducing her drinking to 80%. Like literally, she's like, I really have done it. And then what I love is that a lot of women get really quick results. It's maintaining those results.
Right.
Anybody can lose 10 pounds in a
Long
month.
term, right. Long
It's
term.
6 months. So then 7 months in, coming crying on a coaching call, like, okay, I had a bad night Friday night, and then I did it again Saturday night, and like I should be farther along, and this shouldn't be happening, and what does this mean? And showing up in that vulnerable, beautiful place, getting the coaching, and then a week later being exponentially better and grateful that that had happened as opposed to embarrassed and ashamed and like I have to start over and it's a setback. And I have hundreds of women who have these results and they didn't stop drinking. They just did their homework, listened to me, and it just happens naturally as you increase. Like the solution to alcohol use disorder is a feeling of relaxation, contentment, powerfulness in your life, and clarity about who you are and what you want in life.
I love it. I have goosebumps with that story. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Colleen, well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. This has been great information for myself as well. I think that, this really applies to highly successful women, right? Like the stress that we have to endure. And then as a mother and taking care of young children and, holding down the fort in the house, it's a lot of responsibility. And these are just coping mechanisms that we've programmed ourselves uh to tell ourselves that it's going to help us feel better and really it doesn't and we know that. So this is very valuable information because I am a believer you don't have to abstain from it 100%. You don't. You just have to learn how to control it so that you're not excessively
As
drinking.
the name of my podcast says, it's not about the alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. It's inner wounds that we have, and that's what we need to start attacking and reflecting and accepting. So, thank you again, Colleen. If any of you have any questions or information, you can send us an email at the Bear Experiment Podcast at gmail.com, or leave us a comment in the comment section in our YouTube channel. And I love it. I will be posting this podcast out today. Thank you so much for all this valuable information, Colleen, and I wish that you have a great weekend.
You as well. Thank you so much, Monica, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.